Hey everyone, I'm just making this video to give you guys some information about APA formatting and then also how to paraphrase and how to write a direct quote using APA formatting. Um, so, so I'm going to just kind of go through this APA outline real quick, and I'm going to be really particular about the formatting just because, there's really only one way to do it. So please make sure that when you're doing your APA formatting that you are following all of these directions. So the first thing is make sure that you have this running head written exactly how it is in APA format. Um, Times New Roman, size 12 font in the header with a colon. And then the title of your essay should be in all caps. This is not bolded. You should not have bold anywhere in APA formatting. You notice that what is written up here is actually a shortened version of the full title, because if it's more than 50 characters, you need to make a shortened copy. You write your name and then the university or institution. So in this case, Bridge to Rwanda Leadership Academy. You also want to have a page number on the same line. So your page number shouldn't be down here or up here. It should be on the same line here. And also in Times New Roman, size 12 font. This should be centered and about halfway down. Now you'll notice on the second page, there is no running head. That should be deleted. For these kind of shorter essays, there's no reason to have an abstract, so please ignore this abstract page. That's for if you're writing like a 30-page research paper and you want to write a quick little summary about what your research was about. So your page should start on this page. So you'll have a 2. You'll want to center your title. Make sure that your title is written, the full title is written centered, size 12, Times New Roman, and you have the running head. Notice it doesn't say running head, that's only on the cover page. And then you write, everything else should be in size 12 font, Times New Roman. Notice there is no extra space here. This space is the same space as the space between the paragraphs. So make sure it's double spaced all the way through. If you need to go through and remove the space before or after the paragraph, please do that in your formatting. Also make sure you only have 1-inch margins. That should be the default setting, so you shouldn't have to change your settings. Usually you will make a bolded subtitle if you have like multiple parts. If you're writing a research paper for the sake of a 5 or 6 paragraph essay, there's no reason that you need to have multiple sections. And then you just keep going. This is a bit of a longer one. Please make sure that everything you write that is from another source has this reference page. You'll notice that there's a particular way that you have to write the references in ABC order, C, H, T, U. All of these references are also found in the in-text citations. For example, we scroll through here. Here's a reference to Cummings. Here's a reference to Hugh or Who. Okay, so please make sure that you include both in-text citations and the citations in your reference page. If it's from an article, you'll have the last name, first initial, second initial. If there's multiple authors, you'll put those. Put the year in parentheses, period. You'll put the title of the article, just like this, and then you'll put the publication in italics, along with the issue, the edition, and the issue number and the page numbers. If it's a website, then you won't have page numbers or issues, or an issue number or volume number. If it's a book, then you won't have an issue or volume number either, but you will have page numbers. So if you are struggling to find the author's name, the publication, or the year, then it's probably not a good source to use for your research, and I recommend you finding a different source to use. So please follow all of these directions. There's another video I made about the same thing. Check it out if you haven't. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because this week in your Grammarly reports, I added another component about plagiarism. Now, it's really important that you followed um, the citation rules for APA formatting. Like you can see here, most of this essay, like there's a citation here, there's a citation here, there's a citation here for Hugh, there's a citation here for Cummings, there's a citation here for Hugh, there's a citation here again for Hugh, there's a citation here for Underwood, there's a citation here. There's so many citations. You can see every one of these paragraphs has 2, 3, 4, 5 citations. So it's so important that while you're writing that you give credit. If you find information from anywhere that is not from your own brain, that means a video, an interview, a book, an article, a blog, anything, absolutely anything that if you find information from anywhere, you need to give credit to that author. And you do that in the text by writing an in-text citation. At the bare minimum, you need to have the author's last name in the year. You can see that's provided in every single one of these, whether it's an in-text citation or a parenthetical citation. You need to have the author's last name and the year. And then, so I can go to the reference page down below and see exactly, okay, here's Cummings 2002. This is where that information came from. So when you're writing your essay, you need to provide both in-text citations and the citations in the reference page. But like I said, this is what your Grammarly report is going to look like. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a section that's going to talk about plagiarism, and it tells you, like this particular student, you can see they detected plagiarism 5 different times, and it shows you the exact link where they think that you plagiarized from. So it's really, really important that if you do find information on another site, that you show that. Now, I want to show you something specific about this report. Sometimes the report will detect plagiarism. In this case, we can see, you can tell that it's plagiarism because it has anything that has this number or this line in the number on the left-hand column and kind of this bluish green color is, so 62, 61, 60, that's all showing plagiarism. But in this case, not just because it is there doesn't necessarily mean that it's plagiarism. So this example is saying that this whole part here is plagiarized, but you can see that this student put quotation marks, which indicates that, okay, I took this quote from somewhere else. This is someone else's words. Now, this particular student didn't necessarily, I guess I said in the United States Declaration states, so we know that had a lot of different authors. But you should also include a year just so that it is in APA formatting. But if we scroll down to another one, like in this case, let me go over here. Here's a bunch of different, here's another report. For example, this whole quote here, let me scroll up to where it is. Here's something. Okay, so this whole part, the student copy and pastes from somewhere, but there aren't any quotation marks, and there isn't a reference to an author, and there isn't a year. So this, in this case, is actually plagiarism. Okay, so make sure if you're giving a direct quote that you include, meaning that you copy and paste from somewhere else, you give quotation marks, the author's last name, the year, and a page number if it's applicable. If you are paraphrasing someone else's words, meaning that you learn the information from somewhere else, but you are either summarizing or writing in your own words the main idea or some information, then you still need to include, at the bare minimum, the author's last name and the year that it was published and a page number if it's applicable. So in both cases, whether you choose to take a direct quote or paraphrase, you still, in the bare minimum, need to include the author's last name in the year that it's published and a page number if it's applicable, okay? And you need to cite that both in the text and on the reference page in APA formatting. It's very important that you do that, okay? Now I want to walk through just a little bit. You can go to Longman, page 102. That's where he kind of walks you through how to write a good paraphrase. Now keep in mind that paraphrasing is not simply just copying, pasting, and changing a few words. That is still plagiarism. Paraphrasing is where you communicate the idea through completely different structure, sentence structure, organizational structure, and completely new words using synonyms in different types of speech. So in this case, learning explanations of language acquisition assume that children are rewarded for saying the right words and punished for their errors. But parents do not stop to correct every error in their children's speech, so long as they understand what the child is trying to say. And they give a quote. Indeed, a citation. Indeed, parents often reward children for the incorrect mistakes. A 2-year-old boy says, "Want milk?" is likely to get it. Most parents would not wait for a more grammatical or polite request. So, a correct paraphrase material would be what's in this second box. So, the original text, what you read from the articles in this first box, the correctly paraphrased, what you're putting in your essays in the second box. Carol Wade and Carol Charvis say that children do not acquire language from parents praising their correct speech and punishing their errors. For example, if parents can understand a child's request for milk, even if it is ungrammatical, they will give the child the milk. In effect, say Wade and Charvis, the parents reward, and I quote, reward the child for the incorrect mistakes. You'll notice reward the child for the incorrect mistake is a direct quote from this top part, okay? But everything else is paraphrased, okay? And it's paraphrased in a way that the sentence structure is completely different, the vocabulary is completely different, they reduce the words, it's completely different. This person did simply not copy and paste and change words. They changed the structure, they changed the vocabulary, they reduced the words, they simplified it. Okay, so here's some tips on how to paraphrase well. Read the original passage more than once so that you understand the main idea, okay? I recommend that you even jot some bullet points on a separate piece of paper to jot down some of the main ideas. Now, this is something I told G9, I will tell you again and again. If you're trying to paraphrase or summarize something from an article, read it, take the notes, read it again. Then when you go to write it in your original paper, exit out, cover it up. Do not look at the original text again, or else you will be tempted to write with the similar words and in the similar structure. Whereas if you completely get it out of your mind and think about it as if you're explaining it to someone else or summarizing it, then you are much more likely to use your own structure, sentence structure, and vocabulary and use your own words. So I recommend you guys to definitely do that. And then just to double check, go back to the original after you write up what you want to say and make sure that it is completely different. Keep in mind, when you paraphrase, you are communicating the idea through your own original words, but you still need to give reference by giving at the very minimum the author's last name, year of publication, and if applicable, the page numbers as well. Okay, go back and read through this on page 102 through 105. Here's just an example of the original with a good paraphrase and a bad paraphrase. You can notice that the bad paraphrase kind of emulates similar sentence structure and includes a lot of similar words without even quoting it. Okay, but the good paraphrase completely changes the sentence structure from the original and kind of uses synonyms and doesn't use a lot of the same words as what was in the original. Okay, and you can see that on your own. Yeah, so just go back and review this. Here's some exercises if you need to go back and redo these exercises because you might have realized, oh, I didn't paraphrase that well enough. Then that is a good idea. Let's just go through this one. The original, I'm looking at number 2. Original, it is not the strongest of species that survives, more the most intelligent survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Charles Darwin. So if I were to paraphrase that, I might say something like, Charles Darwin argues that the species that is most likely to change would be the species that are most adaptable, not the species that are strongest or most intelligent. So you can see I basically said that all in one long complex sentence. I started out with the subject of the sentence Charles Darwin, and changed the order by talking about the most likely to be adaptable and not the species that are the most strong or the most intelligent. So I completely changed the structure of the sentence. I reordered everything. I changed the subject of the sentence. Um, and that would be a good paraphrase. Okay, and you could even change from intelligent to maybe smartest, or strongest to another adjective that could mean strongest. But yeah, go through and practice those. Now, another thing I wanted to show you guys is you keep in mind that you should not be doing a lot of direct quotes in your essays, okay? Usually, when you're writing an essay where you got the information, where you had to do some research and find information from other sources, I would say 9 or 8 times out of 10, so like 80, 90% of the time, you're probably just going to paraphrase the material that you read in other places. Now, that doesn't mean that you aren't going to give credit by citing them. Okay, you will do that 100% of the time, but you will most of the time paraphrase what you learned from other places just because that fits. And here's some reason. Okay, so I'm just going to read through this page. There's a lot of really great information here. Okay, first, remember that any paper you write should be guided by your ideas and your organization because it's your paper. Okay, the borrowed material is there to help, support, and lend credibility to any other points that you make. Okay, so if you read a really great article that had 3 main points, those really shouldn't probably be the main points that guide your essay. You have your own outline, you have your own ideas, you have your own argumentation, and you're simply taking bits and pieces from other places that help support what you are saying. So if you see an article with some great structure, you should absolutely not emulate that structure in your own essay. You're simply using it as a way to support what you're arguing. Okay, do not let someone else's paper run your paper. Okay, so it is better. It is generally better to paraphrase than quote. Quotations tend to stick out. They draw attention to themselves and away from your ideas. So keep them to a minimum. That's why I said 80% of the time you're probably going to paraphrase. And keep them short. Okay, if you can quote a few words instead of like a bunch of sentences or a whole paragraph, please just do that, and just do some quoting. So the only times that you would really ever quote is if you want to put emphasis on the authority. So some statements are more convincing coming from the right source. So for example, if you're quoting from someone famous like Abraham Lincoln or Paul Kagame, and the emphasis should be on who said the quote, then you probably want to give a direct quote. You probably wouldn't want to paraphrase some famous thing that Abraham Lincoln said, or Paul Kagame said, or any other famous figure said. And then also the precision. If they're, like, for example, if I say something like, think harder, not smarter, or that's kind of a bad example because that's a bit of a more of a common phrase. But if the precision, meaning that when an important phrase could be lost in paraphrasing, then then quoting it is more preferable. So if there's a very specific structure and um, if it's just a very precise way of saying something, and it can be said in one easy sentence, then go ahead and quote it. Okay, make sure to give credit to the author, the year, and page number when applicable. And then also vividness, which is very similar to precision, but a source may phrase something in a particular way or descriptive way that would be lost in a paraphrase. Okay, um, so if there's just a unique way that an author expressed something and the sentence structure really stood out to you, then and it communicated it in just such a clear, direct, and beautiful way, then go ahead and quote it. Okay. But if you're more so if it's more of the idea, the message is what's important, then please just paraphrase it. There's no need to quote something that can be easily paraphrased. Okay. Um You might think these three qualities could pertain to the most borrowed material, but in practice, how often is a statement so authoritative that paraphrasing it would cause it to be less persuasive? How many sentences would you lose? How many sentences would lose something important if they were rephrased? How often is a statement so vivid that its vividness would be lost if rephrased? Not often. Most material can and should be paraphrased, but there are instances in which the original carries a weight that paraphrasing cannot capture. Those are the times when you should quote. A paper without any direct quotations would seem remiss. Okay. So, also, one thing to keep in mind is try to avoid quoting something that's longer than maybe 2 or 3 lines. And if it just so happens that you do need to do that, that's called a block quote. And here's some details about how to do that in your paper. So you want to make sure that you double indent. You can see here, this is a single indent, whereas this is a double indent. Okay, there aren't any quotation marks here, and you should lead in like a similar approach um, here. Okay, and then they quote where it came from, the author, the year, and make sure to give it a final punctuation too here with the period and then the page numbers. Okay, that's called a block quote. It's really not used that often. Really, only use it if it's more than 4 or 5 lines long, and if you think, ugh, I just absolutely need to quote this, it is absolutely necessary, then go for it. Otherwise, try to stray away from quoting something that's longer than a couple lines long. Okay, so hopefully that gave you some very practical pointers on knowing when to give a direct quote and when to paraphrase. Also, go back through your Longman. There's even some IXL exercises if you're struggling with still changing the structure around a sentence and the vocabulary and knowing exactly how to paraphrase something. Um, Go back onto Longman, go back onto IXL. If you've already exhausted the exercises on IXL, then do it at the 11th grade, do it at the 12th grade level. Um, they're all on there for your help. And like I said, really go through and look at any time that you see, like at the bottom here, anything that you um, anything that you copy and pasted from another source. Um, make just go through there and be like, oh wow, yeah, I did copy and paste that. I didn't cite that properly. This week you have a new chance. You can see that in your problem solution essays, you'll be able to. You need to have at least one direct quotation and one paraphrase from 2 separate sources. So if you made a mistake last week, that's fine. We learn best from our mistakes. So this week, please. Go in there, really think intentionally about how am I going to integrate this quote? How am I going to integrate this paraphrase? How are you going to kind of give some context to the quote or to the paraphrase by introducing the author in the year? Um, there's different ways that you can give a direct quote. Let's see here. Yeah, and I want to walk through some of the specifics on um, how to practically quote and how to practically paraphrase. So you can see here um, some examples. So if you have one author, Aramis, 2004 case study of a boy with autism found art therapy to be a useful tool to help him relate to others. That's a paraphrase, okay? This person probably read a whole study and they took that as the main idea. Um, if you have 2 authors, you say Abrams and Kane, 2007, report the dropout rate is double that of other schools. Okay, notice that this style puts the author's name in the actual text and only puts the year in parentheses. You could do it differently, where you state what is paraphrased and then put both the author and the year in parentheses. For example, you could say art therapy was found to be a useful tool to help a young boy with autism relate to others, and then in parentheses, author, year. Or the dropout rate is double that of other schools. Abrams and Kane, 2007. You can see these two literally say the exact same thing. It's just styled differently. Both are correct. Okay? And if you have multiple authors, like Hurtado, Day, and Gurin, and Gurin 2003, emphasize that to gain the benefits of educational diversity, universities must, okay, the second time you mention them in your paper, you don't have to say all four of them. You can just say the name of the first one, and then et al. 2003 emphasize that to gain the benefits of educational diversities, universities must, and then go on. Again, you could do the same thing. Instead of putting the authors in the text, you could just put them in the parentheses. And you can do that by writing, to gain the benefits of educational diversity, the universities must, and you say your thought, and you give credit to them in the parenthetical citation by writing all four of their last names with the year. Okay, if you have more than 6, which, that's more like research writing, then you can just say et al. Both times. For a quotation, notice here, if you're putting the author in the text, this is what it would look like. Interpreting these results, Robbins et al. 2003 suggested that the, and then notice right here where the quotation marks start, that is where the direct quote, exactly as it is written. This is not paraphrased. This is copy and pasted from the text, but it also grammatically makes sense. So you want to make sure that however you're choosing to start the however you lead into the quote, that it grammatically makes sense, and you also set it up. Okay, so interpreting these results, there's the signal phrase. Robbins suggests that and we get into it, therapists in dropout cases may have inadvertently validated parental negativity about the adolescent without adequately responding to the adolescent's need for concerns, page 541, contributing to the overall climate of the negativity. Notice this part is your thoughts as the writer, not from Robbins, okay? But you could also say what you want to say and just put the author and the year and the page number all in parentheses together. For example, this one starts right out into the direct quote. The low self-monitoring person is generally more attentive to his or her internal attitudes and dispositions than the externally based information such as others' reactions and expectations. End quote. Baxter, 1983, page 29. All right. And then here's an example of a long quotation where you put the author's last name with the year, and this would be like a block quote, like what I was talking about earlier, where you would indent twice and then put the page number at the end. Okay, so please, anything that you guys get from any other source absolutely has to be in one of these formats. It either has to be paraphrased with this type of citation, okay, anything in blue, or if you're using a direct quote, it absolutely has to be in this type of quotation. And I know you guys are learning. Please don't feel like if you had a ton of plagiarism in your last essay that you did anything wrong. You guys are learning this, and I'm gonna keep teaching you guys this stuff over the next few weeks and few months. But please make sure that you are actively trying to get better at this, because it is something that universities take seriously. And if you do have plagiarism in your assignments that you turn at college, there can be really serious consequences. So that's why I just want us to work on this now. Like I said, don't feel bad if you plagiarized. We're all learning together, okay? And also, some of you have asked me questions about is this APA formatting in text citations with a reference page, direct quotes, paraphrasing, is that something just for extended definition essays? And I'm going to say no. That is for any type of informational essay, argumentative essay, any essay where you are getting any thought from anywhere else, any type of research from anywhere else. You need to provide these kind of um, citations. If you're writing a story about your vacation last summer, or if you're like, for example, your personal essays for college, you're not going to be giving these kind of citations because that's a personal essay about your life. You're not getting information else from elsewhere. So anytime you do get any information from a book, a website, a blog, a video, anything, a newspaper article, you absolutely need to give citation, to give credit to the author, and you need to do it in a correct citation. In this case, we're using APA. If you do research on your own, you might find stuff about MLA, but in British Rwanda, we're using APA. So please make sure that your papers are following the APA citation rules. Okay. Um, yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. So takeaways, uh, you guys for this week need to have at least one paraphrase and one quote, and you need to use at least two different sources. So that means for this week, your reference page will look like this, but you'll have two. Okay, you'll have two, at least two. If you have three, four, or five, that's fine. And anything that is on this page should also be quoted probably multiple times or at least once in your in-text citations. If there's any questions, please reach out to me or look at the APA pocket guide that is attached to your previous weeks. Okay, hope this helps. Bye, everyone.